Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for listening to our content and please like and subscribe. Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome to Peer Athlete. I'm Jeff Francoeur, live from Miami as I work the Braves down here, and I'm along with Britt and Brad back home in the Atlanta studios. Guys, how are y'all?
We're great. Good to see you.
Doing
Good
great.
to see you. And I am so excited this morning we're going to be joined this morning by an 11 year, played in the NFL, won the Super Bowl. As a Falcons fan, it hurts to say it, but yes, with the Saints back in the day with our good buddy John Stenchcomb. But so excited. Is a great man, great father. He's on the SEC network. So today we're joined by Roman Harper. Roman, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate that introduction. I don't think you understand. I'm a Atlanta Braves fan growing up in Alabama, so I was a big Jeff Francoeur fan. I didn't know that you didn't actually say your last name, so I was just being introduced to this guy Jeff, who I couldn't see. And you're Jeff Francoeur. That's really, really, really cool. So nice to meet you and appreciate it. And don't be mad at the Saints because we've been to Super Bowl once and won it. Atlanta's been like twice and lost it twice, so they've had their chances.
Hey,
but they always Atlanta it some kind of way.
You're right. And I'm going to say we dominated for 3 quarters, though, which was the most important thing until the last. But, no, we've enjoyed following you, man, at Alabama. And just before we get going in youth sports, just kind of, fill everybody in kind of what you're up to now, the kids and work.
All right, so I work for SEC Network, ESPN. I cover college football. I'm a college football analyst, I guess is the title. But I still do a lot of other things. I'm investing and really and truthfully, I'm really just a full-time dad whenever I'm not working. So I got 4 kids and married. My wife's name's Heather. We dated in high school, college, broke up, got back together, that whole deal. And we have 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. London is 11. Sydney, my other daughter, she is 8, almost 9. Roman the second, he's 6. He'll be 7 at the end of this month. And Sol, my baby boy, is 2, and he'll be 3 in June. So pretty busy with all these guys, especially now that sports is starting to heat up in our family. And it's fun because my wife and I are both former athletes, and she's way more competitive than I am, especially when it comes to these things. I don't think she understands that most parents just put their kids in sports to give them something to do. That my wife is in the mindset of, if you're doing a sport, I guess you're going to the league. I don't, there's like no in between. So try to talk her down and then stay excited for all the little small accomplishments and small goals that you get within your children is always good. I'm their biggest fans, and I just try and steer them the right way and try and raise them individually the best I can because no kid's the same. They all have different personalities, and it's tough. It's hard because they don't come with instructions. They don't come with like guidelines, and you just gotta kind of do it, especially in today's world.
Man, Roman, I had no idea we had so much in common. So I have 4 kids too, and my wife went to Georgia while I was playing minor league baseball, and we broke up the same thing for a couple of years, got back together. And now we have 2 boys and 2 girls, 9, 7, 4, and 2. So we
are living the same life, brother. We are
100%. But so this show is we love to talk about youth sports, and I'm sure with your kids playing too, you're very passionate. But before we get started, I gotta ask you, what is your favorite youth sports moment from growing up in Alabama?
Mine personally, it's probably it's definitely in football. We won. So my first year playing football, organized football, we won a championship. It was like Coach Ronnie Worley was my head coach. love that guy to death. He kept up with me, and I saw him literally up until he passed away. So it was amazing to see what a young football coach could do for you. You know, the funniest story in it all is that I'll get to my moment, I guess, on the field. But the funniest thing was that my mom, I'm 18 months younger than my brother. Well, no, sorry, 15 months younger than my brother. And so my mom wasn't going to let us play football until we were in fifth grade. She was just like, not going to happen. Doesn't matter. They're just not playing tackle football. Doesn't matter. Doesn't care. Nobody's going to outvote my mom in this situation. My dad was completely out of it. My oldest brother was the one that really kind of introduced me to football, even though my dad's a football coach. But my brother was the one that always had us out there in the yard playing. So um, I was actually at my older brother's practice, just running around playing with some other kids that are just standing around and waiting on the other brothers to finish practice. And so say you know how it is like crickets, termites, and like big boys, whatever the little league, how they break them up in weight differences, whatever the terms are now. And so so then the littlest team coach was just Ronnie Worley, my coach, saw me and was like, came up to my brother, was like, "Is this your son?" He was like, "No, this is my little brother. My brother just being way too over arrogant." Like, "Nah, that's my brother, whatever." And he was like, "Why isn't he playing? Like, can he play?" And he was like, I mean, I think he's ready to go, but his mom holding him back, won't let him play, but I think he could play. And so he was like, "Well, do you mind like if we came over?" So I actually went to practice the first time, and I wasn't supposed to be out there with just tennis shoes on, no pads, and they just threw me a ball. I took it around the house, took it around the corner, and housed it. And the coach was like, "How do we get this kid on our team?" Because I was always fast, I just was small, and and then he was like, "I don't know, we'll figure it out." He talked to my dad, and literally I practiced for like 3 weeks, and my mom never knew I was actually playing football my first year. So until we went to the first Jamboree game, and then they kind of snuck me off, put the pads in the back, like they just never knew. And then I was gone, and then she saw me, she freaked out, and then they were just like, "It's okay, mom. Like I've been doing this for 3, 4 weeks. I'm not hurt like you thought I was going to be." And the coach came and begged my mom, like once she found out, to like please let him stay on the team. And he actually came to my house. We had a one-on-one, him and two of the assistants, like a recruiting visit for Little League football. As a little kid, I didn't know this. I was in bed, my coach actually told me about this when I was an adult playing for the Saints. He came in town. I got him some tickets, and we were out at Drago's at dinner. He told me about this whole meeting he had with my mom that just like smooth it all over to make sure that I could stay on the team. And I was like, "This really happened?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like in there hardcore recruiting to like, "Please let us have your kid. Like, I promise you we'll do good by him." All these other good things. And he was excellent. And then lo and behold, we go undefeated all year long, and we ran a double reverse to win the to win the championship. It was like third and 35, and somehow or another they let me get a double reverse, and I housed it. So it was good, and that was my like welcome to football type of moments and years. It was really fun. I loved youth football and what it taught me, and just all those guys, early relationships, the success of it. The worst part about youth football to me was doing the 6 inches on the ground, like tapping on your belly and stuff, just trying to be tough. So those are the worst memories, and everything else is great.
So Roman, we're going to dig into that a little bit. Was football the only sport you played, or did you play other sports? And can you just kind of walk us through your youth sports journey a little bit?
Yeah, so I played basketball first. I always played basketball. Basketball was, I won't say my first love, but it was the game that I really thought I was going to make it in for a while at some point in my life. And I played baseball for 1 year. I didn't get any hits. I couldn't see the ball. I mean, I come to find out I needed glasses and stuff the whole time, but I just was not. Glasses were not as cool as they are now.
Yeah.
So um, I didn't, but my brother played it as well, and he was actually a really good athlete, like a great athlete, and hit the ball all the time. He just didn't like baseball, so he never stuck with it. And so I played basketball and football after that, all the way through graduating high school. And I was always a starting point guard for every team I was on. We played AAU, travel basketball, all those little things. And but I think after my going after my ninth grade year in high school, I got a growth spurt for the first time, and then after that, I really honed in on a little bit more football. And then when my head coach Bill Clark got to Prattsville, the former UAB coach, he stepped away because of some health concerns. But he came to my high school, my going into my 11th grade year, and after that, I was all football all the time, and I thought that that could be a future for me, just because my brother was getting recruited, and so once I saw him start to get recruited, I was like, I want this too, and so going into my then after that, my senior year, continued to get recruited, and just said football was going to be it for me, and I still played basketball all the way through, but I knew at that point football was going to be my future.
You played both quarterback and safety in high school, right? So how did you? I mean, did
Yes.
you always know that you would wind up being more on the defensive end as opposed to being quarterback, or when did that happen?
The fact that that even comes up in questions, right? Other people ask me that too. Lets me know, like, I guess they just don't tell you I was really not a natural quarterback, or actually my stats, because I threw for more yards than I ran for. So
Yeah.
I might look like a quarterback, but I only played quarterback 1 year, and I really only played it because Coach Clark was like, look, Roman, you can play wide receiver or something else, but like, I don't know if we have a guy to throw it to you. So how about you just run it for us the whole time and just be the conductor and you play quarterback? He's like, I think you can do it. And so I did it. I learned how to play quarterback in a couple months. I had never played it before, really before that, and it just happened to work out that way. But it actually, I learned that you get a lot more love when you're the quarterback, uh, whether you deserve it or not. You're the show, and but a lot of pressure comes with it, a lot of team responsibilities. But I was always going to be a defensive back. My father played DB. My brother played DB. I was just wanting to play DB, and when I went to camps and stuff, I was pretty much going just to be a defensive back. But it was really fun to experience the offensive side of it because some now you kind of it made me more of a well-rounded player, especially as I got older, because I remember what we were trying to attack offensively and what I was always looking at, and then you take that and put it on the other side. When I played safety, looking at the way schemes are built or the way blocking schemes are set up, you see the same holes opening up as a running back does, just on the opposite side. So that's a really good way to trying to say, like, I can meet the guy in the hole if I see the hole too. So just go there.
Roman, you talked about looking up to your brother and your dad. Did you set goals for yourself, or how were you different than the other guys on your team? I mean, Prattville's got an amazing reputation of high school football, but did you work harder? Were you more focused than your teammates? I mean, what differentiated you, obviously, besides just your talent?
I would never say that I worked harder. I don't think that's it. Number one, I'm lucky. You know what I mean? God chose me to be where I'm at, and I stayed healthy enough, and I kept my head straight. I think that's a lot to do with my parents really being on me a lot. As I wasn't a perfect kid. I wasn't. A lot of times I didn't get caught doing the dumb stuff I was doing. That's the lucky part of it, I guess. But my mom was always on me about making sure if I get my grades, then I can accomplish anything. Like and I wasn't going to the college to think about going to the NFL. I was going to college to get an education, get a degree, and so now I have something to fall back on if football doesn't work. Like that was always talked about in my household. It wasn't about the NFL. It wasn't about the league or like all these other lofty goals. It was really just kind of keeping the things right in front of you that are important the most right in front of you. And so, and just kind of living in the moment. I'm kind of naive in that way that I've always been that person. I don't really think too far ahead of me. I just kind of attack the day as it goes. And but I am a goal setter. I do believe in setting goals, small goals to achieve big goals. I've always kind of been that person. I'm a very goal oriented person. So as long as I got something out there that I'm trying to get to, it always continues to provide me some kind of hunger or this push to kind of to go get it. And so once I check these things off, I always try and put new things out there in front of myself. But I would not say in high school that I was like the guy that I became or that I was going to be this this player that turned out to be a really good college and professional player. I wasn't the top guy on my team, in my opinion. We had a running back named Kelsey Shepard who got offers before I did. 5'10", 210, 215, ran the low 4.5, 4.4. So, I mean, I had talented guys around me, all around me, but I was the one that, kind of got my grades right, stayed out of trouble, and continue to just fly under the radar, continue to put in the work. And I always had a knack for it, and I love football. Football is a passion of mine. It was my first love. So because of those things, and when you're chasing your love, it's never really a work. It's not work. It's just I'm just happy to be there every day.
Roman, I'm going to go back. You said something that I love. We have so many people on coaches, athletes, even parents, in the sixth grade. My kid's not big enough. Is he ever going to grow? And I love what you said, because you talked about in ninth grade, all the way to ninth grade before you hit that huge growth spurt. And, I want you to talk a minute to the parents and coaches and these athletes that at sixth, seventh grade say, I'm not fast enough, I'm not big enough, because as well as I do, you hit that growth spurt and it was like you took off and became a whole different player.
Well, not only that, but I sat the bench in seventh grade, eighth grade, barely played ninth grade. And then all of a sudden, 10th grade, I get a growth spurt, and I didn't fill out. I just got taller. I went from 5'7" to 5'10" and some change. And then, stayed around that, and then a little bit under 6 foot or right around 6 foot till I graduated, went to college and got another growth spurt. So you just don't know what's out there in front of you. And, I hear it from my wife even, she went to a doctor, and the doctor's like, oh, your son, he's going to be under 6 foot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you even know that? How do you know? My son is 5 years old. Maybe he's not going to be 6'7". That's fine. But he's 5 years old. I'm not going to listen to some guy tell me what my son's going to be. Who am I? And so you don't know what God has for anybody. So I don't sit up there and listen to those things, and everybody tries to project. And I'm like, look, if a person has a passion for something, let them chase it. And, if my son wants to run around the house and throw balls at me, I'm excited. If he wants to sit up there and play Dragon Ball Z on his Nintendo Switch on the weekends, dude, let him have that. Let him be a kid. Let them enjoy the time and space they are, because they got enough time to be, to deal with all the pressures of life. That's going to come with time. So, but I remember in junior high specifically, a good running back that we had. He was maxed out though. Now that I look back on it, I mean, he's still under 5'9". So, but at the time he was so big in junior high, right? And he made me miss an open field. And my dad just came over to me and was like, I was really down about it. And he was just like, look, in a couple of years you'll be working with me, because he was the DB coach in high school. He's like, you'll be working with me. You won't miss that tackle. I'll show you what to do, how to keep your eyes down, technique wise, little stuff, and you'll be just fine. And so learning from those moments right there, that you all right, you just put that in the bank, get better from these things. And that's all it is. It's trial and error, and it's not a perfect word. And there's not a perfect game played by perfect people. I would always tell people that. And I just try and enjoy the moment, because Jeff, I get asked that all the time. Hey, what do you think about my son? Do you think he's this? And I'm just like, I mean, sure, man, whatever. It's really, it's really hard for me to judge these young people in the space that they're with, because, man, you got to be lucky, you got to be healthy. So many things got to fall in your way for you to actually make it into the top less than 1% of the world.
100%.
Roman, what was your recruiting process like? I mean, you said you weren't that big and you hadn't filled out yet, but obviously you ended up at Alabama. Was that kind of where you always wanted to go, or did you have other opportunities? And I mean, how seriously did you take it, and how did your parents play into that story as well?
So I'm glad you brought up my parents. I think they played a big part in it. Well, see, my brother got recruited the year before, and he was more smaller D1 schools and no huge D1 schools. So he decided to go to Troy State at the time, but Troy University now.
Right.
And so my parents really didn't miss games, so they always supported us. And my mom asked me, as the recruiting process started to heat up my senior year, that, hey, could you stay in the state? We got 5 or 6 schools that all want you. Could you probably stay closer, so then we can go to all you guys' games? The further away you go, I just don't know if we'll be able to go to everybody's games. And so, like I said, I was not even thinking about the NFL or earning this, where am I going to go to get to the league? It was more just okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Everybody's got a good college education. I'll be able to get a good education, and I can play ball at any of these schools. All right, I'll just stay closer to home. So it came down to my last 2 schools were Auburn and Alabama. And I chose Alabama, not being a fan of Alabama at all. My parents went to Alabama State, HBCU, right there in Montgomery. So I didn't grow up with like Alabama or Auburn ties. I grew up in an HBCU family, so I didn't care about those things. I chose Alabama though, and it was completely my choice. My parents they allowed me to do whatever I want. They were just going to support me, and I chose Alabama for three reasons, and these three reasons have never changed. Number one, um, Alabama was Nike, and Auburn was Russell Athletic at the time. I had Russell Athletic in high school, so I was ready for the upgrade. Like I was ready for the upgrade. Number two, number two, Alabama's colors were closer to my colors at Prattsville, so I knew I looked good in it
Yeah.
already versus like the blue and white and the orange. Yeah, like I didn't know how I was going to vibe with that. So it was just a little bit different of a feel. So the colors mattered. And then the third reason was the DB coach, Chris Thurman at Alabama. I really, really enjoyed him. He was the guy that was mainly recruiting me. Auburn's guy, it was a family friend that was recruiting me, that was a running backs coach. The DB's coach I didn't vibe with as well. So those are my three reasons. And I mean, the mindset of an 18-year-old, like that matters. It's like colors, what brand I am, and a DB coach.
It's awkward because Russell is our title sponsor of this show, so we'll just kind of have to clip that part out of it. But don't worry about that. No, I don't know if Russell is
great socks, great socks.
As I'm not wearing any socks right now.
Roman, so talk.
That was a joke, by the way. That was a joke. They're not the title sponsor.
Oh.
Talk to me a little bit about you and your dad's relationship. You talked about him being your coach in high school. How was that with a father, compared to as a coach? Was he father and coach? How did that dynamic work?
Well, the funny thing, Jeff, man, is that my dad was like really old school. So he wasn't even like this lovey-dovey dad guy that he is as a granddad to young kids. Like he was never really that nice, was never really cool. All he wanted me to do was work all the time, like outside door, like this yard work, manual labor all the time. I was going to my friend's house in high school cutting their grass. I'm like, bro, how am I cutting my friend's house? He was like, it needed cut. So I told his mom you would do it. I'm like, I'm not even getting paid for this. So it was a whole deal. And then when I got to high school, all of a sudden he told my mom, you know what? You've done a good job of raising the boys, but now it's time for me to raise them and turn them into men. And he was really tough on us. He was disciplined, but he gave us a lot of leadway too to like mess up, to be young men, to make mistakes, and really a lot of the teaching moments. That's when he was awesome. I really tell him that he's an awesome, amazing teacher just in life, stories, and really being able to compare and using the things that he's done in life to try and guide you. And I think when him being a DB coach, it was great. I spent a lot of time with him, especially in the scout team when everybody else was working on offense, first team reps of offense. I'd be on the scout team in like my ninth and 10th grade year, just really teaching me about angles, where to hit guys at, bigger guys, because I was a smaller guy, like how to continue to make sure I'm tackling with the right form, not just using my head, getting my head to the side, understanding how to get guys down with angles, leverage, all those little things. He was just behind me all the time. And so I got a really, really great foundation and base of my eyes and angles early. And I think that paid off for me tremendously down the road, especially being a coach. And now it's funny, I put up an Instagram thing a couple years ago because he never stops coaching me. Like, I'm like, Dad, I got it. And he's just always giving me more and more. And he's like, hey, on this one, da 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 da. And the New Orleans Saints a couple years ago gave up 2 onside kicks versus the Falcons. And in the game, the Saints still won the game, but
Yeah,
to give
we
up
remember.
two onside,
Yeah.
Trust me, we know.
Of course,
We know y'all
of
won
course,
every
of course.
game you've ever played against.
but to still give up 2 onside kicks is like that's detrimental, like
Yeah.
conduct detrimental. And he's like, I'm at home, and he's like, Roman, did you see these onside kicks? I'm like, nah, Dad, I was traveling, I didn't miss it. And so he gets a pen and paper and starts drawing up all the numbers of the guys, like, and each one, you got to have a head count. So you got to get one, you got to communicate. I'm like, Dad, I know how to do onside, like I got it. But he's like wants to draw it up for me, give me this diagram. It just takes me back to when I was in high school on Saturday mornings after the game. On Friday nights, he's like, always coaching. He's always bringing stuff to the house and sitting there over dinner all the time at practice, going back over things. This is just what I was used to all the time. And I was tired of it then, but then as I've gotten older, I actually appreciate it a lot more because, even when I would be watching film, preparing for games when I was in the NFL, he'd always ask questions. And I like to give him a little bit of a breakdown on some of the game plan things that we're trying to do. Or if he sees me doing certain things, just trying to tip him off from up top. Like, all right, if you see me doing this, this is what we're kind of setting it up for. And it'd be really cool to always hear his feedback on what I'm doing or different situations. What his response would be because I always look to him. I know he's my dad, but I called him coach for a long time, and so I always look to him for that type of guidance. And if he knows me better than any of my current coaches, so if he's like, what, man, like Roman, you were right for this, or you were maybe wrong for that, then I trust his opinion.
That's awesome, Roman. You'll do the same for your kids, I'm sure.
Yeah. I catch myself doing it now. I do. I
Yep.
catch myself doing it now.
100%. You find out you're a lot more like your old man than you
Yeah,
ever thought you did.
that's right.
Way more.
Hey, I'm curious. Do you and your dad talk about some of the new rules in the NFL? You're just talking about he taught you how to tackle, and of course everything's changing now. What are your thoughts about all that?
I don't really. So he talks to me about random stuff that NFL stuff happens, like because he's got a homeboy of his, my man, Mr. Lindsay, our former neighbor, who like they just like get together, they talk about stuff, and there's no better person to bounce any NFL news off of than my son that played in the NFL. So
Yeah.
I get the phone call, and it's like some whatever random news of the day is going on, whether it's a bad penalty or something that happened in the game. So yes, a little bit, but my overall opinion about so I was playing when the strike zone kind of got implemented or altered or introduced to the game, right? So, where you can hit guys and where you can't. And what I always leaned on was, all right, well, fine, then I'll just go lower on guys, right? And go to blowing out knees or taking out knees, even though I never heard of ACL, but the guys don't like that. And so if you can't hit them up high, I think college is the worst. At least in the NFL, you still got hard hits. Like people just get bombed on and it's okay. There is no like targeting like it is in college where if you like lean or lunge or anything, it's a penalty in college versus the NFL. Like I gotta lean and lunge. This guy's 6'4", 265. I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. Like if I don't lean and lunge, there's no way I'm bringing this guy or knocking him back, right? And it's almost like we forget that in the game of football, we are defending. It's a game of inches. We are defending every single blade of grass. That is why they measure it on third down or fourth down because it's literally a game of inches. So if I don't get that knockback, if I don't hit him in a certain way, then he gets the first down and they continue to move the drive. And of course, I know everybody likes offense, but they just make it harder and harder to play defense. It's I think the college rules are a travesty. I understand the targeting rule that they play with in the NFL just because you don't want guys flying around hitting everybody in the head. It's a reason why the concussions and all these things are real and are studied upon. I do believe in all those things, but I think the college rules should be changed. And I'm cool with keeping the targeting rule, but I've never seen in any sport where you punish the amateurs more than you do the professionals for the same penalty. All right, you kick guys out in college instead of all right, give them a 15 foul, personal yard foul or whatever, but you got to let them stay in the game. You got to. It doesn't make sense to punish these kids. Not only that, but people show up and pay money to see some of their best players that get kicked out in the first quarter of a game because they're playing aggressive. And as a defensive coach, you can't tell it. And I watch a lot of these plays, and if you can't even tell me how to correct the technique or the mistake that was made, then what am I doing? Like, what are we doing as a whole? If you can't even teach a kid how to correct it or how to do it better, then it's just now it's just part of the game, and I think it's messed up because not only that, but the reason why the safety's job is to either make a play on the ball or separate man from ball. Like that is what I'm told, and so that has changed over time. Quarterbacks are just more and more daring. They'll just throw it across the middle anyways, hoping to get the flag. So it's a benefit completely to the offense, and all the rules benefit the offense all the time. And I'm sorry to come from a personal place in my heart, but it's so true.
No, speaking on that, Roman, I want to expand. We're about the same age, and I played tackle football since I was 6 years old, all the way through high school. I mean,
Yep.
there was never a thought. Now, obviously, so many controversial. When do I start my kid? Is it too early if he's 6, 7, 8 years old? What's your opinion on that? I'm curious.
So my opinion on is I think flag football is a really good thing. For a long time, I was anti-flag, but it's good because it teaches everybody, and that's all kids, all shapes and sizes, whether you're going to be playing O-line or not, you can at least get out there playing some space. Learn how to play in space without everybody being a collision all the time. And that's the thing that people don't understand. You work so hard to get to the NFL, and then when you get to the NFL, they're like, hey, why are you hitting all the time in practice? Like, nobody wants to hit all the time. We're trying to get everybody to Sunday. Like, you got to learn how to be a great athlete in space without being on the ground. If you're on the ground all the time, that means you're not a great athlete. You probably won't make the team. Like, nobody likes people always on the ground. We're trying to get work done. We're trying to work smarter, not harder. We're trying to be efficient with our time. And we can't be efficient when guys are always tripping up over each other and we're always on the ground. You got to be able to stay up, keep your feet. So your whole life you think like, oh, well, you want to be this way, but actually when you get to the top, it's like, nobody's on the ground. Nobody's on the ground in practice. Like, I would never die for a ball. You're kidding me? Not happening. But it's just really funny. So I think flag football is a way to kind of get you guys used to playing in space, catching a football, understanding route concepts, defenses like cover 2, cover 4, man to man. So you're getting a lot of the same concepts of what football is at its pure form, but you just don't have a helmet on, and guys are still learning how to play the game and playing in space. So I kind of like that. But in my opinion, my son is going to have to play football by the time he gets. I would like to see him playing before junior high, because junior high is like this weird time where I think, got some kids are big enough to where they can't hurt other kids. You got some guys that have hit puberty, some that have not. And, I don't know what the coaching situation is and how they're going to do these things. So I think they do need to get used to at least being in some pads, what contact really feels like. And if you want it, like, it's got to be a want factor. Parents can't be sitting up here saying, like, oh, my kid's going to play this if they don't want it. It's unfair. You're not going to get the result, and you end up with a whole bunch of people with hurt feelings, including parents. So I would like to see my son, if he wants to play, which he's always telling me he does, that I would like for him to play at least before junior high, so at least you get a taste of it. I just think if you just walk out there junior high being your first time, I saw it in my own eyes. The size difference was just night and day from like a sixth grader or a seventh grader to sometimes an eighth grader.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I always say too, and you've talked about it, I think also with tackle football for me, the life lessons I learned in football and the work ethic. I tell people all the time, I was a good baseball player, man, because I was mentally tough from playing football. I knew how to get through some of those things. And I tell my wife all the time, that's why I'm going to push at some point for my boy to play football, because of those lessons.
Yeah, I think it's great, Jeff, that, the team sport, like the fact that, like, I don't think people understand how much goes wrong in football. And I would listen to my coach, name's Joe Vitt. He was a linebackers coach with New Orleans Saints. He actually just went out to Denver with Sean Payton. But Joe Vitt would have talked to us all the time. He's like, 85% of football is like horse crap. The practices, they stink. The meeting times, boring, so hard. All the off-season work, the blood, the sweat, like all the hard work you put in for like the 15% of the wins. You only win like 15% of the time. That's like a couple games, which you don't even win all those games. All right. A couple awards that you may win as an individual or as a team. It's only like 15% of like all of the work that you put into it, which is all bad. It's all for the other stuff. But that 15%, man, it's life changing. It's life altering. It's the best. Like, that is what you all do it for. You put in all this work week to week just to have a chance to lift up your hand to be a winner on a Sunday. But there's no better feeling than winning a game in an NFL locker room. Like, you cherish them and you celebrate every single one of them because you know how much work you put in from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way through just to give yourself an opportunity to do it. And so I really cherish those things. And the not only that, but Jeff, and you can probably attest to this, is that the relationships you get from it. I don't look at the stats and the numbers. The relationships I got from football and that I continue to make today. I mean, I'm talking to Jeff Francoeur and these other gentlemen
Young men.
Hey, I like that. Young man. I like
Young
that.
man,
Young men.
yeah.
Been called young men for a long
because
time.
I was because of football, man. I just got to be honest. So it's really cool, and it continues to open up doors for me till this day.
So, Roman, that's awesome. Let's stay on that track for a minute about life lessons, because you started off our conversation saying that you learned a ton about life through youth sports. So, can you just talk about some of the other things that youth sports taught you about life? Because, let's face it, most of the kids and parents who are watching, their kids aren't going to play pro football or pro anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so what if youth sports is all there is, which is likely for most people, what can they get out of it?
You can get out of work ethic, being a part of a group or a team. Like I don't think enough people in today's terms, when you're on an iPad all the time and you're playing video games, maybe you're playing Call of Duty, but you're on a team, but you're not on a team. It's almost like being on a golf team or a tennis team. You get a little bit of that team aspect of it, but it's still very much so individualized and so much more of that. And so because I was never the best player, I learned to sacrifice. I learned to like it's more about everybody else. And so I think it's a lot of these things in life lessons learned in youth sports and like never giving up, understanding what hard work is, that, it's okay to be tired and your mouth being dry. And you know what? You're not going to die. Oh, coach, I'm so hungry. I'm like, I still have never seen a kid die of hunger in America. Still ain't seen it. Ain't seen it yet. My dad's been telling me this since I was a kid. Like, hey, you're going to be all right. Come on, just finish this thing off. Knock it out, right? And it's something about learning this mental toughness where like you get through adversity that changes you when you're on the other side of it. Like you just don't know how much. And look, everybody knows it. Well, not everybody because they hadn't been through it, but your mind will break way before your body does. And until you push yourself that much, until you push through certain pains and adversities in life, we're like, man, we've been down such and such. And those are the things that I learned. It's like, man, being down in a football game and just never wavering. Just never wavering. Just keep it going. Just keep stroking. Keep fighting. And then all of a sudden turn out and win those games. Like those are the things that you get from football, from sports, that you cannot get anywhere else. And you can, as a fan, as a humble fan now of the game, I get it. Watching sports is terrible on the heart. It is emotionally a roller coaster. And so when you're playing the game, you don't have time to worry about the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs. I get to the sideline, I'm just trying to get to the next series. I'm trying to focus on what they're doing. I'm working. Versus like being a fan, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a emotional, this is tough on you. So I understand all those things, but like I said, there's nothing like having adversity, getting through those tough times when you don't know the outcome and it's dark going through that tunnel, and all of a sudden you getting better on the other side of it and being a better person, a better teammate, a better team, and really learning from those mistakes and just those adverse situations. To me, I think that is one thing that's been great for me, especially trying to be a man and a husband and lead my family in the way that I do when things aren't great. Like I can't blink. I can't. I got to keep it going. Or, the moment I start to have panic in my game, like everybody else in the boat may rock and start to shift too. So I got to stay forward. I got to stay focused and making sure I'm on point all the time and being consistent with who I am, because I got to be the head of my household and lead it in the right direction that I'm trying to make sure we go in.
Roman, you talk about adversity, and I'm going to just kind of thought there was probably no better example in our lifetime than what you found yourself when you show up to the Saints, and it's the year after Katrina,
Yeah.
and seeing that city, and all of a sudden 3 years later, y'all win the Super Bowl. for people watching, and I know it's not youth sports, but what was that like walking through that time in New Orleans and, of course, coming out on top for that city?
Well, the thing is like, being from Alabama, I knew of Hurricane Katrina. It was messed up. I mean, I was in Tuscaloosa and we had a Hurricane Katrina party because like school was out, things kind of blew through. It's just what college kids do, right? And then I get drafted there like a year later and I go down there and it's still devastated. I was like, man, this place is like messed up. Signs were all gone. Walmart closed at like 6 p.m. So to me, that was like world blowing. Like, whoa, Walmart closes early. Um, and that's because they didn't have enough people to like fill the hours. They just didn't have enough. And the Superdome, nobody had been there. And I played it in the game, the first game back in the Superdome that Monday night versus the Atlanta Falcons.
We
And so,
remember.
yeah, Jeff, you clearly remember all these games. So
I do. I do.
it was funny though. And I walk in there and I see all these people emotionally crying and everybody's so just like, just it was really emotional in this building that night. It was my first time ever there. So I was kind of oblivious to it all. I was more excited. I'm like, man, that's Mike Vick, man. Like, bro, I was the biggest Mike Vick fan ever. I was just shocked. I'm like, dude, that's the coolest thing ever. This is Mike Vick I'm playing against. And he did not let me down with how fast and excited he was. But so to see that, to see where it was then, and then see how just slowly and surely, and I really felt it, Jeff. And it was even that first year we won 10 games and went to the NFC Championship. That literally all the FEMA trailers and all the houses and all the blue tarps over everybody's houses just to like keep water out and all the destruction. It was literally, they were excited to come to games on Sunday just to get away from their everyday life. Like we were their escape. And we hear fans talk about it. They were just so thankful to have us back and just what that team means to the city. And the longer and longer I played there, the more and more I understood it. It's because New Orleans doesn't have like big business. It's not a banking city. It's not all these other, big company operations coming down there. They got oil and they got entertainment. So the whole hotel and hospitality is the entertainment industry. That is New Orleans. So people don't move to New Orleans because of jobs, right? You're either born there or you come there and you just never leave because you love it. It just sucks you in and you just become one of the community, you become part of the whole culture there because it is super, super culture rich because it's the people. And so that's what I learned about New Orleans. So the longer you there, the more they love you for who you are. And if you become part of their community and part of them, like, man, they'll treat you like gold. And so it's funny because now I can walk around Carolina and nobody really knows me. I'm right here in Charlotte. Like I'm just kind of doing my thing and nobody ever says anything. But I go to New Orleans, I can't walk down the street without somebody just driving by a car and be like, hey, Harper, da da da. And it's just different. And I'm one of those. I'm one of their people, and I helped them bring a Super Bowl. And I mean, I just announced a draft pick, and they're still thanking me. They're thanking me personally for like helping them bring a Super Bowl, and it wasn't me. It was literally everybody else. But I was part of that team, and we did something great. And we'll be looked at, and like my man Joe Vitt would always say, when you win the biggest games like that, you'll walk together forever. And I was part of that locker room that does.
That's very cool. Let's talk about your broadcasting career. When did you kind of realize that's something you wanted to do after football?
So at once I retired, I took 365 days off, did absolutely nothing. I really needed to decompress to figure out what I wanted to do. Did I want to coach? Do I want to get into upstairs and at an NFL team? Do I want to be around football? Like I didn't even know what I wanted to do. And eventually I started to like, all right, this is starting to get old. I got to do something. And I jumped in. I did a broadcast boot camp through the NFL that they offer. And it really gives you like a deep dive into a quick one of just like, all right, what's radio like? What's TV like? What's calling games like? Can you answer questions? Can you give me a timely answer within 15 seconds? Information driven, getting in, get out on TV versus radio, telling more of a story, drawing the picture, having a little bit more leadway on all those things, and also can you be an interviewer where I'm asking the questions, Are you doing the research? Are you doing the study? All the things that it takes to go into these little programs and stuff and understanding doing the work. And then once we get you out of here, how are you going to progress? Are you going to just go dive in? Are you going to offer up your time and your abilities and understand that you're going to stink early, but there's only way to get better at it is time on task. You got to get more and more reps. And so that's how it started for me. And then once I was done, I did TV in New Orleans at the WDSU Saints on Six with Fletcher Mackel, Sharif Ishak, and Coach Jim Mora. And so I did primetime games down there in New Orleans. I did that for 1 year, 2 years, 2 years. And then my second year, I started working with Fox 46 here locally, covering the Charlotte Panthers, Carolina Panthers, here in Charlotte, with the Fox affiliate. Whenever I wasn't working in New Orleans, I would do the one here. And then I started doing some radio with my boy Kyle Bailey on WFNZ. And that's where I really kind of just learned, like, all right, who Roman is the analyst versus like Roman the football player. So learning how to be, as long as I can be critical, as long as I'm fair. Like just calling balls and strikes. Like there's nothing wrong with that. No matter who your affiliation is, like if you can't run the ball, you can't run the ball. If your O-line sucks, like they stink. And it's not me. I'm just telling you what it is. And you guys can take it personal if you want. But I'm just being honest. And so a great example of that is Kentucky Wildcats last year. They, everybody's all hyped. They had a good year the year before. And I watched them against Ball State in the first game. I'm like, look, Kentucky's O-line doesn't look good to me. They look kind of soft. Ball State kind of pushed them around. And that's not the Kentucky O-line I'm used to seeing. To getting pushed around versus a team like Ball State is going to be a reckoning. That's all I'm saying. And they came at me. They were all in my DMs. And by the end of the year, Will Levis, the most sacked quarterback in the college football. Oh, he's getting hit too much. I'm like, I was just trying to tell you that. But, hey, you guys are in your emotions. And low-key, they were all all the Kentucky fans, the big blue fans, they all came to me secretly whenever I see them on the road. Like, man, you were right, bro. We sorry. Like, our bad. Like, it was us. So it is validation when you do get it right, too.
Well, and then
So, Roman,
finished off a great season by watching their quarterback sit the whole first day of the draft and not get drafted.
Man, you know what, Jeff? The worst part about that is, so I was at the draft, and I know Kentucky's football SID because, I've been on the road, seen her.
Yeah.
And she's awesome person. And, they take it personal, and it's not even them. I'm like, look, I feel bad for Will Levis's mom because when I talked to Will Levis that morning, he said the only thing he cared about was that his mom's finally getting to wear this dress she picked out 2 months ago. She was looking forward to it, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, cool. So I feel bad for her. But everybody else, I'm like, dude, I don't feel bad for you. You're a second-round pick. Happy. I was elated I was a second-round pick. But it also goes into what are your expectations? I'm sorry you were expecting a hot ticket first-round pick, but you're not. I'm sorry. And so now you're going to be a little bit more fired up. You got more to prove and use this as motivation for you. But in NFL, nobody cares how you get in the locker room. It's all about what you do when you get there. And I'm sure it's like that in the majors as well. So that was not the problem. But the SID really made me laugh because she was like, it's just another like, man, Kentucky, football. We're trying to like not just be known as this basketball school. And, we were going to be the first round quarterback we've had since Tim Couch. I was like, dang, it's been a minute. She's like, yeah, this is what we were looking forward to. And then all of a sudden we get kicked right back down to like not checking that box again. So it's like, man, they all take it a little bit personal and, it stinks. But at the end of the day, it's the game, man. This is what it is. And I don't know what they didn't like or what it was. But, if he'd have been healthy and not thrown as many interceptions, he would have went first round.
Well, and like you said, it's all that matters is you get in there, right? I mean, Brock Purdy went from Mr. Relevant to the starting quarterback of the Niners now in 1 year.
Yeah. It's going to replace the guy that they took third overall and traded up like 3 picks for. So it doesn't matter. That's the thing about it. So if you get all your emotions up on that, then that's the same thing I feel when it comes to like NIL money. And look, I love the fact that guys are getting paid, but if you making your decision purely based upon what school I go to is how much money I'm going to get paid at that young of an age, that just lets me know you're probably not going to reach the real money, which is on Sundays. because if you're not focused on trying to be the best person, the best player overall, because if you're just a good player and you're a bad person, you're not going to get drafted high. You're not going to have high value because they look at the whole person as a whole. And so if these things outweigh the other, that's where it falls off at. For me personally, I checked all the boxes. I'll never forget when Sean Payton told me I was safe. I felt so disrespected. I'm like, hold on. You took me in that because I was safe? He's like, yeah. But then when I look back on it, didn't take my emotions out of it. It's like, okay, two-parent home, check. Father was a coach, check. Really great player, check. All right. They said he'll be like just another coach while he's on the field. Check. He's just checking boxes, meaning I'm safe. Like no off-field arrest. Check. All right. Never been in trouble, arrested. No, no gun charges. No. Pretty good. No, like, yeah. Okay, check. It's just safe. Like, man, he's a plug and play right now because you can trust him. He loves football, like plug and play. Versus some other people, when you don't have all these other things checked, you're going to come up with some red flags. And then at that point, do you pick up like, all right, well, the football outweighs the behavior?
Yep. Well, I tell you, that's strong, man. And, finishing up here, last couple questions we have for you. We thank so much for giving us the time today.
Oh, no doubt.
My first question would be, what is your advice to all the coaches on here that are going through these process with the kids? What would you say to them as they're coaching these young athletes?
I would say keep the athletes first and don't ever stop learning from them. I think every generation is different than the previous one. So you got to continue to evolve with them to continue to speak their language. I think the best coaches are the ones that just get it. Like I don't know what that means, but you get it if you don't understand what I'm saying. Like the best coaches are the ones that push the guys, that know how to push them, that know how to get the best out of them. And I don't think you can coach each player the same. You got to be able to coach players individually. And I think, uh, as a player, the best players always want to be coached the hardest. And so don't ever forget that. So the special ones that you see it in them early, coach them. Like coach them harder because they want it and they can take it. And you're going to do more justice with them in the long run because they'll never forget you. At least that's how I feel. My best coaches coached me the best and the hardest. They didn't let up on me when they saw greatness in me because they pushed me to that. And they fed me confidence in it too. Like, don't tear them down with words, but man, lift them up with confidence. And you're probably going to get the better version of them with that side of it. And so that's what I would say is, man, just don't ever stop pushing them. Be able to speak their language because each generation is different and just continue to coach them up the hard. Like when the special ones are there, coach them up the hardest.
That's awesome. And final question, Roman, you talked about your mom and dad being so instrumental for you.
Uh-huh.
Now you got 4 kids of your own. What are a couple of things that you will take that your mom and dad did in you that you're going to instill in your kids?
Number one, the first thing I will take is that, and I've told them all this already, is that, and it's almost like silently, like just implementing a goal inside their own head without even them knowing it. I'm just planting seeds. And I've told them since day one, like, you all got to get a scholarship to college. You're all going. So it's not even a debate. You're going. All right. And you're all going to have to get a scholarship, doing something. I don't care if it's in, video games, twiddlywinks, football, basketball. I don't care what it's in, but you got to get a scholarship. And just academics, I don't care, but you got to get a scholarship doing something. And so, kind of like putting that goal out there for them, and just figuring it out. Like I don't know how it's going to happen, but you got to figure it out. And so, having some ownership in it as well, so everybody's got a little bit of skin in the game. As far as it comes to furthering their education, I think it's really important. That's one thing for sure I'm implementing. I've already been doing it. They already know that. And then another thing I would say is just I'm pretty honest with my kids, and I get that from my dad. Like, you know, I'm not going to really, I'll sugarcoat it some, but when you mess up, you mess up. And when I see you do certain things, that's just like, I mean, you can be the same player all you want, but like Here's a great example, Jeff. So I don't know if you guys are used to know Kung Fu Panda, the movie. All right.
Oh yeah.
All right. So Po, the Kung Fu Panda, Po, is the Ninja Warrior. All right. For all those that don't know, all right, Po's the Ninja Warrior, and Master Shifu is his master, right? And so Poe is like, man, he's just cool with just being the Ninja Warrior. And he was like, well, do you think Master Oogway sat on, in silence in a cave for 300 years to all of a sudden decide you were the Ninja Warrior, to all of a sudden you just get to come out here and kick butt? Like that's not what the Dragon Warrior is. It's just kicking butt. You got a bigger calling than that. And so if you only do what you can, you will only be what you are. And so that is what I tell my daughter, Sydney, all the time. My younger daughter, Sydney, is a special, special athlete. She's a rare bird. She's really good. She's super fast. She dominates anything she puts her mind to. But you go see a soccer trainer because your dad can't teach you soccer because I don't know it. All right. And if you don't ever use the moves that you learn or practice the moves you just want to use your speed and go outside and just do the same move. I'm like it'll look good out here, but you're not getting better. You'll never be more than what you are if you never do more than what you do. You got to understand that. And so those little life lessons I'm honest with my kids about. And even with my oldest daughter playing basketball, all right, if they're going to try and press you and you're playing point guard, you see the trap coming. You can't be scared of it every time and just pick the ball up and want to throw it. Like, you're not doing your team a justice. Like, don't be scared. Be confident in the things that you're doing. Like, being honest with them when the coaches aren't always telling them that. I'm like, I'm gonna let the coaches coach, but I'm gonna be dad and be honest with you and be real with you, because I'm gonna do the same thing when you're talking about dating or school, all these other things. Like, the coach is the coach, but I'm gonna be dad all the time. And so that is why I let them coach, and then I'm get to be dad. But I'm honest, I'm critical, I'm real, but I won't lie to you.
Man, I love that. And now the good news is with Britt and Brad, they're both older. I'm going to make them watch Kung Fu Panda now so they know what we're talking about.
We're not that old.
Hey,
Not that old.
Come on.
Yeah, I know Kung Fu Panda.
Hey man, they drop a ton of dimes in Kung Fu Panda. I'm telling you, I ton of dimes. Master Oogway, Master Shifu, they're just dropping dimes. I'm telling you.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, we can't thank you enough for spending time. I will tell you this. I'm still not a Saints fan, but I'm a huge Roman Harper fan. And I appreciate who you are and what you stand for and spending time with us today, man.
Well, Jeff, if it makes you feel any better, I am not an Atlanta Falcons fan, but I'm definitely a Jeff Francoeur fan. And I love the Braves anyway. Them and the Dodgers. I went to LA when I was a young kid, so I fell in love with the Dodgers. But Atlanta's my team since back in the day, from Pendleton, Justice, and all the pitchers and everybody they had. I mean, even Ron Gant, love those guys. Fred Nixon, all those guys. I mean, I literally watched every day with my dad on the couch. So it was really, really cool. And thank you. I'm glad I got to talk to you. Hopefully I get to meet you one day. I told you, I thought I was shocked when you're like, yeah, Jeff Francoeur. I'm like, hold on, what? But yeah, thank you guys for having me. And I'm glad Stinch got to hook this up. And
yeah, me too, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Roman. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Roman.
Appreciate
it, man.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you, man. Have a
Take
good
care.
one. Bye-bye.
All right, you too.
Take care.
Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for checking out Pure Athlete, and subscribe to our channel on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you go to listen to our podcast.